It took 2 years to build. It cost £60 million. It's the most modern school in the country. A flagship for building schools for the future. It's the HLC, the Hadley Learning Community.
Now I'm in it, living it, running it, and it's amazing, really. It sounds arrogant to say there's not much I would change, but there is very, very little I would change. You know, you're never going to get all of that down to the last detail. You're not going to get it completely right. But yeah, I'm very happy with it. It's just been immense, immense.
1 year after opening in 2006, is the HLC an education campus fit for the 21st century? And have the first year's results been any good? The HLC is an extended school. Hailed as the most expensive school in Britain when it opened, it was built for the borough of Telford and Wrekin by Interserve, who'll maintain it for the next 25 years under a facilities management contract. It has a 1,200-place secondary phase, co-located with a 200-place primary school. There's a special school for 165 children with profound learning difficulties. There's an early years unit and community and sports facilities which are shared with the people of Hadley. In a far-sighted move, the borough recruited Dr. Jill Eatough as principal, 18 months ahead of the opening. Jill worked with architects and designers to stamp her mark on the layout and the equipment installed in the HLC.
Okay, well, we're going to have 1.5 doors for ICT, really.
We followed the process in a 10-part series, culminating in the opening of the school in September 2006. Now, after 3 terms, we've come back to see how things have gone. Morning briefing, July 2007, 2 days before the end of term. The theatre's been left untidy, with tables cluttering up the place. So straight after briefing, Jill's right on the facility manager's case.
Hello, have you seen the theatre?
No.
Stuff everywhere. It's not right.
Being a private finance initiative, or PFI school, facilities management is in the hands of the developer, Interserve.
OK, I'll leave it with you anyway. All right. Somebody should have checked this morning, not us, that it was ready for school. Sometimes the wheels come off a little bit, but on the whole, but we just like to keep the pressure on. Good morning. Good morning. It's a bit all hands to the pump today, I think. Good morning. You all right?
Jill makes regular trips round the school, keeping her finger on the pulse.
Good morning, everybody. Aren't you supposed to stand up when I come into the room? OK, on this wall, big boards. One there and one sort of down there. Which way are you ready? Can you reset some of these tiles? It just annoys me and I can't reach them.
It is a good school, but school.
But actually, Nisha, she's been a bit modest because she's one of our success stories. Because this young lady didn't smile for the first term, did you? No, she found it hard moving, but she's done really, really well. We're really proud of her.
At the end of the first year at the HLC, Jill Eatough's able to reflect on the enormity of the job she's had to do.
It's been an emotional rollercoaster, and I think, you know, nationally, what we've done, you know, people are going to be building schools all over the country, but you cannot get away from how emotional it has been.
Emotions have been rather high at times as a consequence of the HLC taking staff and students from a well-loved secondary school. The Alton Park School was closed down and demolished by the local authority, against the wishes of many parents and pupils.
Young people coming here who all their walls had been removed. Staff who had worked in another school maybe for a long time, coming here, totally feeling out of sorts. And managing that and developing people to do the things you need them to do and to get young people to meet their expectations has been a massive, massive job.
It's not as good as Alton Park though, because in Alton Park you had a good atmosphere. This place just feels like really closed in. It's just really horrible.
I think Alton Park was a lot better. I mean, you're getting used to this place, so it won't be so bad in a while, but still Alton Park.
Some pupils from Alton Park found it difficult to settle in. There were tears in the toilets and 1 or 2 incidents of poor behaviour. Some staff found it difficult to adapt to life at the glitzy new HLC. The strength and the endurance of emotional ties to a former school was something that the school leadership underestimated during the first term.
When you open a new school with the children, particularly children who've been in a previous closed school for a long time, there is a sense of bereavement, and I'm quite open about the fact that we didn't take that on board initially. You think they'll be walking around starry-eyed and eternally thankful for this fabulous experience that we're giving them, but you know, that wasn't the case. The children were fairly nonplussed about it. I think that's probably the bit we missed.
I was very keen that we got them straight into lessons on those first couple of days. And I just wonder now, in retrospect, whether I spent enough time settling the kids in.
Not doing enough to manage the emotional needs of pupils and failing to anticipate all the consequences of closing a school are experiences that Jill feels other school leaders should be aware of.
I don't think anybody in the whole sort of building schools of the future, new schools, has really clocked that how do we deal with the kids and make them feel more settled? Because when they arrived in September, it was like, I don't know how I relate to this place. I don't know how I relate to these people.
Paul Topping was appointed as Vice Principal, Head of Secondary. The job was his first at head teacher level, and after being pretty hands-on supporting Paul for the first term, Jill Eatough had to adjust her role as principal.
I'd really like to see him every week.
I need to learn not to be a secondary head teacher any longer, and that's what I have spent this year unpicking, and I have to be very careful that I'm not saying to Paul, are we doing this and are we doing that? But at the same time, I have an absolute obsession about getting everything right.
After a year in charge, Paul felt it was time to stamp his mark on the HLC. In the last week of the summer term, he called a meeting with his secondary leadership team. There'll be some changes next year.
I really wanted this afternoon to be part of a new beginning, because I felt very much over the course of the year that I wanted to change the structure of the leadership. So, this is the new leadership team, and I've agreed with Jill a little earlier on in the year that I would change titles, because I've been very unhappy with the title Vice Principal Head of Secondary, not so much from a status point of view, but simply from the fact that it confuses people, because I often get people in the building who think I'm the deputy head teacher, or think I'm the vice principal, or think that Jill is the head teacher, and I just think that causes confusion amongst the children and the parents and the community at large. So we agreed that she would call herself a principal and I would become a head teacher.
Paul also announced some promotions. Head of Science Jim Smith was made a deputy head with responsibility for curriculum planning.
One of the big moves is towards vocational education, towards travel to learn, and towards Campus Telford.
And Head of Maths Emma Knights was made an assistant head with responsibility for data tracking.
By September, I want every student to have individual targets for every single subject. I want it to be on a sticker, I want it to be in their planners, I want to be really, really clear to everybody what their targets are.
Head of Humanities Dan Roycroft was made an assistant head with responsibility for homework.
This is homework, this is what is done at home with parents, with their support, and if we haven't got their understanding and support, then we may as well forget it.
The HLC school improvement partner, Dame Enid Bibby, was invited to attend.
My role is as a partner with the school. I don't have an inspection brief at all. It's really simply to ask you questions about what is happening, how you know it's happening, and whether you're confident that you're going to achieve improvement. I am what's sometimes called a critical friend, with the emphasis on critical.
The secondary curriculum was developed by Paul Topping in the 12 months before the school opened. He consulted widely with senior staff to get their input and agreement.
As it stands there, I've worked on 5 one-hour lessons, effectively 2, break, 1, break, 2. Now, I appreciate your thoughts on this.
I mean, as a practical subject, great, not a problem. My only other concern, though, is as you go down the ability level, time on task, you have to be very careful on designing the lesson to make it small changes throughout that lesson.
From now on, Jim Smith would be responsible for the curriculum.
So it's like, what's best for us?
But he was to get a taste of what the SIP's role as a critical friend meant in practice.
One thing that's being sort of bandied about in future school thinking is basically learning pathways. So you have an academic route, a mixed academic and vocational, then a key skills core, because we have to, and vocational qualifications. And I think heads of faculty look at if this would suit them and where they could find qualifications to fit what they're going to offer.
It does feel a little bit like a timetable rather than the curriculum. It looks like a grammar school timetable for LP1. It looks like a technical timetable for LP2 and a secondary mod timetable for LP3. Maybe I wonder whether you need to think really clearly what the nature of curriculum is, as opposed to something you can timetable and put kids into. Have you considered going to a completely different kind of Key Stage 3 teaching? You know, project-based learning in mini schools there's plenty of good practice around, and I wonder whether you've looked at other models of good practice in terms of curriculum. Now, I don't know, Paul, whether this can be done as quickly as the autumn term.
I think there's no reason why we couldn't look at rechange. I mean, I would very much like to change the look of Key Stage 3 completely.
Because at the moment it feels as if you've taken a curriculum that belonged to another school and the children that belong to that curriculum and have managed that for 12 months. But really, for future thinking, you ought to be at the cutting edge of curriculum, not at the 60s edge of curriculum. And I would caution you against trying to push it through on some kind of artificial time basis. It's too important to rush it.
Yeah, I take your point, this is just one sort of model that we can just destroy and start again.
Well, I'm not suggesting you destroy it. I'm suggesting that you maybe think about having a bit more time to really get bottom this out.
For the head and his new deputy, it was a rather bruising encounter.
No, she's a very sharp lady and quite rightly in her position of school improvement partner points out things to us from different angles often, and she's a great analyst.
I would caution you against writing the timetable first and fitting the curriculum in second.
You've got to stand there and take the brickbats and the criticisms and still come out with a plan which meets the needs of the children. That's really what it's all about in the end. But there's a learning curve for everybody here, and Jim's is probably as steep as anybody else's.
Not at the 60s edge of curriculum.
There was a cri de coeur from Deputy Head Teacher Dave Bowyer. He hankered for something that's missing from the HLC, something that he thought should have been included in the design.
We do need a briefing because, Paul, it's not going to come as a surprise to you, but it's a plea. Can we have a staff room? The only time I ever get to see staff is when I see them in briefing. I can see them as I walk around the staff bases, but there is nowhere that we meet as a staff, and I think we miss out on an awful lot. I know what you're going to say, but...
I'm just saying that the building was not designed as a staff room. That was a decision that was taken before I was involved. And the money went into providing staff workroom bases where faculty teams could work either as a group or with other people. And my own experience of staff rooms, I have to say, is not a positive one, simply because they're not used for a great amount of time during the day. And I just think they can be a ferment of negativity at times, but that's just my own perception.
I would say the opposite. I would say it's a place where you can get rid of your frustrations, where there's always someone there to pick you up, brush you down and send you back out with a spring in your step, and that's been my...
There is no physical space.
Well, there is, because I can tell you about that some other time, but there is.
What do other people think?
It's all to do with relationships, and I don't think this year that we've yet got the relationship right between students and staff and staff and staff.
I can't honestly, I mean, I am not sure that I see the benefit of having a staff room, but that's just my own thoughts about it. I'm quite happy to open it out to discussion.
Well, could I suggest that this might not be appropriate to take this any further at this point in the afternoon? Yes.
Consider the issue parked for a while, Mr. Bowyer. The Bridge School is a key element of the HLC campus. It's for children with profound learning difficulties.
Legs or tummies? Where?
The old Bridge School had desperate accommodation problems, which the head teacher would rather forget.
I often look at the old film of the old building, just to remind myself how narrow those corridors were, because it's a bit like childbirth. You forget the pain. And this is fundamentally one of the greatest things about the school, is the circulation. And that just is so important to the children and young people, because they have room to move around.
The new Bridge School provides 21st century facilities. There are spacious teaching bases. Today it's a travel and tourism class for older students.
Can you spot something that is up like this, and it's very famous, and it lives in France? Can you spot it on there?
Spot it on the poster.
There are white rooms with sophisticated sensory equipment. And soft play areas for therapy and learning.
Oh, good standing.
But there was a sense of shock and awe to deal with when staff first moved in.
This is a very technologically rich school with lots of facilities. And I think staff felt they had to be able to use it all at once. Half a term it took to say, hang on, we don't expect you to do everything at once. So, the development plan for this school this year is very, very thin. It is about staff getting to understand the technology that drives the specialist equipment within the school.
Integration with the mainstream is very important, and students from the Bridge are often seen in the primary and secondary buildings. The pool is a very popular facility. And the gridlock when trying to get 30 minibuses on and off the premises twice a day is now a distant memory.
We'd have to queue up, wouldn't we, Derry, for about half an hour, 9 till half 9.
Yeah.
We're here now for 9 o'clock, gone by 9:10. So quick, much, much better.
For the first term at the HLC, the primary phase was housed in the old buildings of Hadley Infant School and Hadley Junior School. But immediately a cross-phase curriculum was introduced. 2 primary staff taught maths and English in Year 7, and 18 secondary teachers taught 32 hours a week in Key Stage 2.
Buenos dias. Good day, good morning. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
In January 2007, primary children finally moved into the new facility, and the old schools were demolished. Having primary and secondary pupils closer together has made cross-phase teaching much easier.
Mostly what happens is the children come into secondary phase to receive their specialist lessons, and that's worked very, very well. And what it has meant is that a lot of our secondary teachers have got to know primary teachers very, very well, and there's a shared understanding of how the children work, and we're sharing curriculum ideas and innovations and so on. And that's very unique in the country. And I still, when I do go out talking, that's one of the things that people like to hear, because there's a great move, I think, towards co-location of primary and secondary schools.
As well as building on cross-phase teaching, Paul wants to see much more personalisation of the curriculum.
All children here will continue, obviously, to do English, Maths, Science and ICT as their core subjects, but you know, if they identify that they're particularly interested in one area of work, I will try to allow them to major in that. And I think education is going that way anyway. Diplomas will be in the school, I think probably in 2009. Some children will be spending the equivalent of 2 days a week majoring in one aspect of a curriculum, and this is a way in which I think the school is starting to mould itself within that framework.
The HLC has a professional dance studio. Paul's introducing a new vocational BTEC dance course, which will mean some Year 11 students dropping science.
These girls have not had dance before. Some of them have done bits outside of school, but I've only had them since September, and the amount that they've achieved is unbelievable. Mr. Topham takes a lot of interest in our lessons. He comes in, sees them dance, and he can see himself how much they've progressed. They're dead keen, they come after school almost every day, they come lunch times. I think him seeing that himself persuaded him that it would be a good idea for him to do this BTEC, and so that in the long run maybe I will turn towards BTEC rather than doing GCSE at all.
For these children, you know, dance may well become part of their career aspirations, and I want them to gain as much accreditation as they can when they're in school. They're very interested in dance, they dance very well. And in terms of personalisation, I just think they have a better curriculum diet if they do more dance and less science. Now, there's an argument to you've got to win the scientists over on that because they're losing children out of their subject area. But I'm committed to trying to find those ways of personalising the curriculum so that you know, we play to children's strengths as they go through the school.
We're going to be doing 13 hours in 2 weeks.
Well, my dad was he said that he didn't really want me to quit science, but then I sort of persuaded him, so he said yeah at the end. And he was like, well, if you really want to do it, then you can.
Staff and students at the HLC have been pleased with their new learning environments, and there have been few complaints about the design. That is, apart from some local difficulties. There are some areas of the school that get too hot. The cafe bar downstairs has been roasting, and the head of secondary's office and the area outside have suffered from radiant heat coming in from skylights and windows that don't open. At times, rooms have been too hot for students to use.
Those things are embarrassing, and we're suffering from overheating in school buildings continually now. How do you actually create a learning environment that's cool all year round, despite the fact that it's 25 degrees outside? You're plugging all of these kids in there, and you're plugging in 700 laptops, kicking out all of that heat. How are you going to cool a building down in the middle of summer? Classrooms and schools, we understand that the best way of actually improving the environment for the learners is to have lots of natural daylight. Natural daylight means solar gain. Solar gain means heating the building up again. How are you going to cool that building down if it's 25 degrees outside?
Interserve are rectifying things, but say modern, highly efficient buildings pose fundamental questions about how pupils are taught.
Are you going to design your building for the hottest 6 weeks of the year? So you're going to put in air conditioning, you're going to put in a lot of extract fans, you're going to have a very high energy usage, a very unsustainable building, or are you going to change your practices? Are you going to have a different curriculum that doesn't mean people have to sit in sweaty boxes in the middle of summer? Could you, for instance, start your school day earlier and finish earlier, so you're not actually in the school building during the hottest part of the day? We're really struggling to actually say, we're going to design a school building that's going to be carbon neutral, plus it's going to have fantastic natural daylight, and you can plug all the ICT kit you like into it. It's just not going to work.
It's the last day of the first year for the HLC, and the first time that the entire school has assembled in the sports hall for prize giving. For Jill Etuff, it's an emotional culmination of 3 years' work to establish a learning community.
Times in your life when truly special things happen, and I think this afternoon for me is one of those truly special occasions, because we're here to celebrate our first year of the Hadley Learning Community, and I am absolutely amazed that we've done it. Give yourselves a round of applause.
1 month later, the 23rd of August, GCSE Results Day. Today, parents will find out if the HLC has reached its targets for improving performance in its first year. There'll be many who, rightly or wrongly, see a lot of significance in how well the school's done in this year's league table.
Double C in science, C in textiles.
4 C's, that's enough to get on my college course.
5 A's, 2 A stars.
Why did we come straight back here?
Come on, Jasper, should we go then?
Jaspreet Jutler and her mum are on their way in to get her results.
Really scared. Don't worry. No matter what, I'll be proud of you anyway.
Like most of her year group, Jaspreet came to the HLC from Alton Park School, halfway through her GCSE courses. Paul Topping hands out the paperwork at the end of a stressful first year in charge. But with the results better than last year's at Alton Park, Paul was able to start his summer break a happy man.
Results have been really pleasing. We did some analysis on them last night, and we've come out in the middle 50s in terms of 5 A stars to C's, which is above our target, and the other targets that we've been set, we've matched or bettered them. So I'm absolutely delighted, because it's bearing some fruit really at the end of a long, hard year's work, and of course delighted for children, because it means they've got the results they need to go on to college or to their employment.
And Jaspreet Jutler's rather happy too.
Ooh, I passed them all. 3 A's and 5 B's and 1 C.